Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we cut through all the academic jargon, skip the long read, and really just give you the core insights from key papers. You get the takeaways, the surprising bits, the context, basically the shortcut to knowing what's important.
That's the goal.
Today, we're diving into something that, well, it connects our love for the outdoors with the tech we carry every day. Managing recreational fisheries using smartphone apps. The paper is Angler Apps as a Source of Recreational Fisheries Data, Opportunities, Challenges, and Proposed Standards. The lead author is Paul A. Venturelli.
Right.
And a little fun fact here, it was published in the GOTY section of the journal Fish and Fisheries. You might remember GOTY, George Bernard Shaw's famous example showing fish could technically be spelled G-H-O-T-I, using sounds from other words.
Yeah, like the E in rough, the O in women.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the T's in palatial. So GOTY signifies a place for, really challenging ideas, and this paper certainly does that.
It absolutely does. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We need to unpack why the old ways of collecting fisheries data are, well, struggling. Then how these angler apps might be a solution, and maybe most importantly, what standards need to be in place, like now, to make sure all this app data is actually useful for managing fisheries globally.
Okay, let's start right there with the why. Why the big fuss? Why are traditional methods failing? Why is my phone suddenly a conservation tool?
Well, fundamentally, managing fisheries sustainably requires good data. You need to know how big the fish populations are, how many people are fishing, that's effort, and how many fish they're catching and keeping the harvest.
Okay, standard stuff.
Right, but getting that data traditionally relies on things like creel surveys. That's researchers literally interviewing anglers at boat ramps or out on the water. Or maybe mail surveys or logbooks.
Sounds labor-intensive.
It is hugely expensive, takes a lot of time, and often you can only cover small areas or specific seasons. You get these snapshots, but they're often incomplete.
So you end up making big decisions, like catch limits, based on, well, potentially flawed or limited information.
Precisely. The paper points out that relying on this sort of patchy, often underfunded data collection, especially given how massive recreational fishing's impact can be, it actually undermines sustainability efforts. The old ways are just too slow, too expensive, too narrow for what we need today.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now let's talk about this mobile opportunity. It's huge. They mentioned a prediction of, over 6 billion smartphone users back in 2020. That's basically an always-on data collector in almost every angler's pocket.
And that's the key, the potential for high-resolution data collected frequently across vast areas almost in real time. Think about it. Traditional surveys might give you a quarterly estimate. An app could potentially give you daily or even hourly insights from all over a region or country.
And crucially, it's not just theoretical. The paper gives real examples where this is already working, right?
Yeah. That's important validation. They talk about an app used in Alberta, Canada. The fishing effort data from the app, it's stacked up really well against both traditional creel surveys and mail surveys.
Okay.
And another example, the iSnapper app, used for red snapper tracking in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, the harvest and discard data collected via the app showed very few significant differences compared to the standard dockside intercept surveys. So the data can be reliable.
That's good evidence.
Yeah.
But it's not just about replacing old data, is it? The apps can collect new kinds of information, too.
Exactly. That's maybe the most exciting part. Apps go way beyond just catch and effort. Anglers can easily log things like the specific bait or tackle they used, the depth they were fishing, even ice thickness and winter fisheries.
Things you'd never get from a standard creel survey.
Never. And think bigger picture. Environmental observations. Anglers using apps could become this huge network reporting early signs of fish kills, spotting invasive species, documenting pollution events, or changes in water conditions.
Wow. Okay, so every angler becomes like a mobile sensor out there on the water. If you're a fisheries manager, suddenly getting this constant stream of detailed info, how does that change the game?
It potentially shifts management from being reactive to being proactive, even predictive. You can do analyses almost in real time. For fisheries that are really spread out or on large lakes where surveys are impossible, apps could fill huge knowledge gaps. Managers could monitor the fisheries' health continuously and respond quickly, not just wait for the next annual report.
That sounds amazing, almost revolutionary. But the paper throws up some red flags too, doesn't it? It's not a simple build it and they will come situation. They talk about 3 big challenges.
That's right, big hurdles. They frame them as, first, recruitment and retention, getting anglers to use the apps and stick with them. Second, data quality and bias, ensuring the information is actually accurate. And third, integration getting agencies and scientists to actually trust and use this data.
All right, let's tackle recruitment and retention first. The user problem. Mobile apps generally have terrible retention rates, right? Like 5% after a few months.
Yeah.
And anglers, well, they guard their secret spots fiercely. How do you get them on board?
The app has to offer real value to the angler. It can't just be a data extraction tool. It needs to be useful, maybe versatile. Think digital logbooks, easy access to rules and regulations, maybe even license renewals through the app.
Make it useful day to day.
Exactly. And incentives help. The paper strongly suggests incorporating gamification. Things like points, badges, leaderboards, virtual fishing competitions. Make it engaging, maybe even fun.
Okay, but what about the secret spot anxiety? Giving away GPS coordinates.
That's a huge barrier. The solution lies in transparency and aggregation. Agencies using this data need to be crystal clear about how it will be used and, crucially, commit to summarizing it publicly only at a course level, like reporting data aggregated by lake or by region, not pinpointing specific spots.
So protecting privacy.
Yes. They even suggest setting thresholds, like maybe data for a specific area only gets shared publicly once, say, 5 different anglers have logged trips there. It protects individuals while still providing valuable info for management.
Okay, so let's say we get people using the apps. Challenge 2. Data quality and bias. How do we trust the data? People might exaggerate catches, right? Or misidentify fish. And you mentioned avidity bias. What's that?
Avidity bias is a big one. It means the most passionate, avid anglers, the ones who fish constantly, are much more likely to report their trips than the casual weekend angler. If you don't account for that, your data makes it look like fishing effort, and maybe catch rates are way higher than they actually are across the whole population of anglers.
So the enthusiasts skew the result.
They can, yeah. So the solutions involve a mix of tech and statistics. On the tech side, think about reducing the burden and errors. Maybe image recognition. Angler snaps a photo, the app identifies the species, maybe even estimates the length.
Oh, cool, like facial recognition for fish.
Sort of. It takes the guesswork out for the angler and reduces unintentional errors like misidentification or guessing lengths.
And the statistical fixes for that avidity bias.
That requires more sophisticated analysis. You need methods to detect outliers like a reported fish size that's biologically impossible. And you need correction factors. The paper mentions a specific technique, the zero and avidity adjusted geometric mean. It's basically a complex statistical way to adjust the data to better represent the average angler, including those who don't report, correcting for the overrepresentation of the super users.
Okay, complex math needed there. Which brings us to hurdle number 3, integration. The acceptance problem. Getting the institutions, the management agencies, the scientists to actually believe in this app data. There's often skepticism about citizen science, right?
There is, and it often mirrors old concerns about traditional angler logbooks, too. The key here is demonstrating value rigorously. The paper argues strongly for a dedicated phase of testing and evaluation. You need studies directly comparing app data outputs to conventional survey results, published openly.
Prove it works.
Exactly. Build trust through evidence. It also requires embracing big data approaches and maybe shifting the whole mindset. The paper calls for a new management paradigm. Data-rich, enlightened, nimble, and user-defined. It's a significant shift.
Right. And central to achieving that nimble, data-rich future is the paper's most novel contribution, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
This urgent call for standardization. Why is that so critical right now?
Because the app market is exploding, but it's fragmented. You have lots of different companies, different apps, all collecting data in slightly different ways, often using proprietary formats. If we don't agree on some common standards soon, we'll end up with a pile of data that can't be easily combined or compared across regions or apps.
Missed opportunity.
A huge missed opportunity. The paper calls it a rare opportunity to cooperatively shape the design of an emerging data collection tool before it becomes too fractured to be useful for large-scale science and management.
Okay, let's get specific then. What minimum standards are Venturelli and the team proposing? They broke it down into 4 areas, starting with the actual fishing trip details.
Right, the basics. They say apps need to collect location, usually GPS the date, and crucially, the trip's start and stop times, ideally captured live via buttons in the app.
What if someone logs the trip later?
That's allowed. Retrospective reporting will happen. But the app must record how much time has passed between the trip and the report. That delay is data itself. It helps analysts understand potential recall bias, how memory fades, and of course the intended target species for the trip.
Makes sense. Second category, fishing effort.
Simple but essential. How many hours were actually fished? How many lines or rods were used? And how many anglers were in the fishing party?
Mm.
You need all three to accurately calculate things like catch per unit effort later on.
Okay. Third, catch and harvest data, the fish themselves.
Yep. What species was caught, how many, what size, length, or maybe weight. And critically, the fate of each fish. Was it kept, released alive, or released dead?
And they mentioned something about single versus aggregate reporting.
Yeah, that's important practically.
Mhm.
For some fisheries, like maybe trolling for salmon, logging each fish individually is fine. But if you're, say, pan fishing and catching dozens quickly, logging every single one is unrealistic. So apps need an option for anglers to report an aggregate number for a species caught in a certain period.
Practicality matters.
Hmm.
Okay, fourth and final standard, angler demographics and behavior. Why is this needed?
This ties back directly to understanding and correcting those biases we talked about, like avidity. Apps should include a short, likely voluntary registration survey, asking things like angler's age, sex, home location like a postal code, years of fishing experience, preferred gear type.
And how serious they are about fishing.
Exactly. Things like how important fishing is compared to their other hobbies or if they belong to a fishing club. This demographic and behavioral information is vital for scientists to build those statistical models that adjust for bias and make the data more representative of the entire angling population, not just the app users.
So when they looked at existing apps, how did they stack up against these proposed standards?
It was mixed. Apps like FishBrain or iAngler captured a lot of the basic trip and catch data pretty well, but where they often fell short was on collecting those detailed demographic and behavioral data points, which, as we just said, are critical for bias detection and correction.
So a gap exists.
A significant one. Overall, the apps they profiled met somewhere between, I think it was 36% and 83% of the proposed minimum standards. It shows there's definite room for improvement and a clear need for a coordinated push towards these standards.
And the path forward isn't necessarily one single government app, but getting all the app developers, the private companies too, to adopt these minimum data requirements.
That seems to be the most practical strategy. The recommendation is to work towards identifying a core minimum data set everyone agrees to share, adopting formal international standards perhaps through a body like the FAO or the American Fisheries Society, and then, crucially, setting up a formal certification process.
Like a seal of approval.
Kind of, yeah. Similar to how NOAA certifies electronic reporting systems for commercial fishing, if an app meets the standard, it gets certified. That gives managers confidence in the data, and it gives the app company a selling point. Our data meets the scientific standard. It incentivizes cooperation.
It really paints a picture of how these apps, if standardized, could fundamentally change how we govern recreational fisheries. The paper calls it a win-win-win-win, right? Good for managers, good for the app developers, good for the fish resource, and good for the anglers themselves.
It really could be. If you have this informed mobile angling community, what they call a swarm intelligence, feeding reliable, real-time data back into the system, well, management could shift dramatically. Maybe less focus on complex, rigid regulations set years in advance.
And more towards
More towards dynamic monitoring of the resource status, constantly updating reference points, and maybe influencing fishing effort through real-time information and outreach, pushing out alerts like, hey, pressure is really high in this area, or catch rates for this species are dropping. It leads towards what the paper terms the democratization of recreational fisheries.
turning millions of individual anglers from a management challenge into a collaborative data-generating asset.
Precisely. But it hinges on getting those standards right and realizing they'll need to evolve. Technology changes wearable tech, voice control, the standards will need to keep pace.
Which leaves us with a really interesting final thought. The paper asks us to consider, if mobile tech is creating this swarm intelligence among anglers, how does standardizing the data flowing from that swarm fundamentally change how we measure and ultimately protect the resource they depend on?
It's a powerful question about the future of conservation in the digital age.
Absolutely. Well, that's a fantastic deep dive. Thanks for breaking down that paper with me.
My pleasure. Lots to think about there.